I'm sorry, friendships are work. They don't just happen. They're work, and you have to put the work in.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and welcome back to Making Space. Not just a podcast, but a place for honest, open conversations about where people have been and who they're becoming. So, if you've listened to the podcast long enough, you know that I love my friends. You could even say that friendship is a core value of this podcast. The guests in each episode are my friends, and they are great friends, which I don't take for granted. I also want to be a great friend in all of my relationships, which is hard. I've been hearing conversations about adult friendships all over social media lately. People discussing the quote-unquote friendship recession, why it's so hard to stay in touch, jokes about having to schedule a hangout weeks in advance because of crazy schedules, and so on. But the sad truth is that it's true. Friendship post-college is hard, and I want to talk about it because friendship is so important. I don't think you ever outgrow needing friends because we are all relational people. No one can or should exist on their own. We really do need each other. I've briefly touched on the difficulty of maintaining friendships in adulthood in a few previous episodes, but I've been waiting for the opportunity to dig into it with my wonderful friend, Justine. Justine and I met almost 2 years ago when she joined my community group at church. And the first time we hung out, we got into a deep conversation about friendship, and since then, it's something we always end up chatting about. So I knew she would be the perfect person for this episode. If I could describe her in one word, it would be elegant. She is so wise and poised, but also always fun to be around. And after you hear our conversation, you'll know what I mean by that. Obviously, friendship is a huge topic, so we can't cover everything in an hour, but it's an area I'm continually growing in, so I can't wait for you to hear our conversation. And stick around till the end for a special challenge. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so what is something you've learned or that you're currently learning that you wish your younger self could have known?
One thing that I'm definitely still learning is how amazing spontaneity can be. I'm a really big plans person. Since I was a kid, I need to know what I'm doing every day at specific times. Every holiday, I'm that annoying person that would be like, we're gonna wake up at this time and do this and
the
that.
super planner.
Oh yeah, that is me. But the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that spontaneity, especially with my friends, are some of the most amazing moments that I have. So I I did a spontaneous day of trip to Providence with some friends 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
And that was
wow.
completely unplanned. It just came out of the blue. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is an amazing time. You should do more
Wow.
unplanned things. So I'm trying to let go of the plans for my life and just leave room for carpe diem behavior.
Oh my gosh. So did you plan the spontaneous trip? Once it was happening, did you plan it or was it planned by somebody else?
It was planned by somebody else. I just went with the flow of things, and we didn't have a plan for what we were going to do on the day because this was the night of that they texted me, and then we spent the following day together, and it was all, oh, what are we going to do now? What's happening?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I could do I'm a planner, but I'm a last minute planner is what I tell everyone. So I will plan up until oh, let's do this thing. Let's pick a day.
Mhm.
But I won't plan what we're doing until the night before. But not having any plan at all, it kind of stresses me out.
I know. And it usually stresses me out too. But I'm some of the best moments that I've had with my friends have just been oh, let's leave the house and see what happens. And something happens and it's great. So I'm trying to lean into that more.
And it's actually funny because I was reading, this was a few weeks ago, but there was just this article about play in friendships and how when you're younger, a majority of your friendship is spent playing with people,
Mhm.
the people in your life. Even I remember growing up, it was one of those things where the next door
Yeah.
neighbor would be like, can they come outside and play? And then we would just hang out and stuff and just do random things. And so it's oh, as you get older, you lose that. And that is why our friendships are just not as interesting, or they're not as exciting anymore, or they don't last as long, is because they're just so structured. It's let's plan what we're going to do. We're going to do that thing. And then I'll see you later.
Yes, exactly. I miss those spontaneous play dates.
Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard to do now.
Yeah, it's so hard. I know. I hit the age where you have to start scheduling time with your friends, and I hate it.
No, that was going to be like my first question. Why are adult friendships so hard?
Ah.
Because I feel like it's a shared experience. Everyone knows this. Everyone's annoyed about it, but like why is it this way?
Mhm. And okay, are we talking college adult friendships or post-college adult friendships?
I'm talking post. I'm talking post. I feel
Okay,
like college
okay.
is different. Yeah.
Same, same. I was not an adult in college. Like, I know legally I was, but
Mentally.
was not there. Post-college, I feel like up until college, you're in the same geographic space with
Yeah.
everyone that is important to you.
Yeah.
And then you graduate, and at least for me, all my friends dispersed to different geographic
Mm.
areas.
Hmm.
And so, where if I wanted to hang out with like 70% of my best friends when I was in college, I just had to take like 5 steps to their
Yeah.
dorm room.
Yeah.
Now, as like a real adult, I would have to hop on a plane to go see
Yeah.
them and work around their working hours as well. So I think the fact that everyone has a job, hopefully, and that is taking up a lot of time, and then we're
Yeah.
not in the same space, I think just complicated my friendships in a way that they hadn't been complicated before,
Mm.
which was really interesting to like learn to figure out.
Yeah. I think you're talking about like the responsibility of post college life. It's like the job, like the big thing that's taking up the majority of your time is that you have work. And if
Mhm.
you really think about it, I'm not going to go on a tangent here, but if you really think about it, okay, so you like wake up, you're not doing much before you go to work. So you can just erase that time. Then you you have worked before. So, like, I know you're in grad school right now, but you worked before. And then
Yeah.
you have like your after post 5. Let's say if you get done at 5. I know some fields you get done later than that. 5
Mhm.
to let's say like 10 really
Mhm.
are the only like valid hours. And
Mhm.
you have to cook for yourself. You have to go grocery shopping. You have
Mhm.
to what else? Clean. You have transit, whatever you're like if you're driving or if you're
Mhm.
on the train or
Mhm.
something like that.
Mhm.
There's just so many things. And then it's like, oh yeah, also my social life. Also my friends that are out of town. Like when is this
Exactly.
all supposed to happen?
That is an excellent question. And I think we've just never, at least I had never had to deal with that level of responsibility before I graduated college. Like
Yeah.
having a job that is full time. Like I'd had
Yeah.
part-time jobs before, but it's like having a job where you have to turn up by a certain time, like where you have to be on for a specific time and you have
Yeah.
to be in certain places. And then having the responsibility of then going home and saying, okay, what do I want to nutritiously eat for dinner in the absence of like a dining hall?
Yeah.
Um, and then being like, oh, I also should work out. Let me go to the
Oh
gym.
yeah, I even forgot that. Oh my gosh.
Right? Like that 5 to 10 period gets cut real short.
Yes. I can do one thing. I can do one thing and
One.
then I have to go to sleep.
That's it. That's it. And if you choose the gym, well,
Oh my gosh.
it's a lot. It's a lot to figure out.
And so I feel like that's why we like end up in these catch up friendships. I feel like that's the term that's circulating a lot now.
Yeah.
Is like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, why are all of our friendships just like catching up? And it's like on one
Yeah.
hand you want to stay in touch, but then I feel like a catch up friendship is what is easiest because it's like, oh, let's just get dinner together. And what are you going to do at
Yeah.
dinner other than just
Yeah.
talk about what's going on in your life,
Yeah.
which is catching up?
Yeah. 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 Those are the best, I think. I don't know. I have 2 groups of friends, I guess, that I do that with.
Okay.
So when I was in college, I met my 3 best friends,
Hmm.
and I moved to New York when I graduated with one of them.
Okay.
So she was someone that I was seeing every day. And then my other 2 friends, I guess we had different instances where we would try to catch up, but they weren't in my geographic space. So we do that over FaceTime or
Yeah.
Zoom. And I guess because they were my best friends, we kind of tried to move it beyond just catching up. And so
Okay.
we have like a continuously active group chat with the
Yeah.
4 of us,
Mhm.
and we're also texting separately. And then at least that first year, pre-COVID, we were all trying to slot in different trips to the different areas where we all live
Mhm.
to also bring us beyond just doing like bi-weekly check-ins and giving like a list of,
Yeah.
okay, this is what I've done, this is what I've done, this is what I've done, because I feel like
Yeah.
friendships are like so much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely a tough reality. I feel like I have run into that a few times post
Mm.
grad, being like, what has this friendship become? Like, I want to know
Mm.
what's going on in your life, because in
Yeah.
some ways that helps me feel close to you, because it's like, oh, I'm not there, but I know what's going on. But then at the same
Yeah.
time, is that really closeness? You
Mm.
know?
Yeah. I don't know. I think, at least for me, closeness has come from having a good foundation.
Mm.
So, one of the most amazing things about college for me was that my first semester of college, I met my 3 best friends, and this was,
Oh,
like,
wow.
within the first month of college. So, from almost day 1 of college until the day that we graduated, we saw each other, like, almost every single day, and so we had a 4-year foundation behind us,
Mhm.
such that when we graduated, it just felt like it was more seamless, I guess, to continue those 3 friendships than it was to continue, like, any of my other friendships. Because 'cause I'm thinking about my friends that weren't those 3 friends,
Yeah.
and those are the ones that I guess I've drifted away from
Mhm.
more so than those because we didn't have the same foundation, and so those are the ones who, if I'm in the same geographic space as them, I'll, like, give them a text and be like, "Oh, I haven't talked to you for 4 months, let's catch up."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's what makes the difference, like, having a solid foundation with someone, I think, has really helped us be more intentional about how we stay in touch.
And I think what you're also saying is, like, you can't have that with everyone.
Yes, yes.
Like, you can't have that kind of foundation with everyone, and so it's just being okay with things changing,
Yeah, yeah.
which is hard.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's it's tricky, I think also because so you're in college and you have your best friends, but you're also surrounded by a ton of I don't know how to better say this, like second tier friends who aren't like your who aren't like your best friends, but they're still
Yeah.
people that you
Yeah.
can go grab a meal with or go
Yeah.
to the gym with. And so you feel very surrounded by this sense of community.
Yeah.
And then you graduate and yeah, you have like your quality friends, like the 2 or 3 really good ones who you're still in touch with, but suddenly there's just this scarcity of community that kind of shocks you
Mhm.
when you enter the working world and you're no longer surrounded by people who are so similar to you on a
Mhm.
number of dimensions. And I think that's where you have that first realization where it's like, wow, okay, I have colleagues at work, but if I'm going to replicate the version of community that I had in college, I'm going to have to be very intentional about it. And whereas in college, making new friends was like so simple, as like a new adult in the working world, making friends to replace those college friends or, like, supplement your close friendships, I
Yeah.
think, is just a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. Yeah. No, let's talk about it, because I mean, I even have my own thoughts on, like, work friends, but
Ooh.
we don't have to go into that right now. Because I feel like before I, like, started working, I heard so many different things. Like, some people were like, your work friends are not your friends. Don't tell them anything. Don't be close to
Oh my
them.
god.
Don't, like, XYZ. And then other people are like, my work bestie, that's my work husband, that's my work wife, blah, blah, blah. Like,
Oh,
we hang out
no.
outside of work, we, like, do
Yeah,
everything together.
yeah.
So, one, it's like finding the balance, because I think you can make, like, genuine friends at work.
Yes.
I don't think everyone at work is going to be your best friend, nor are they supposed to be. But it's also like people always say as an adult, it's hard to make friends. And then it's like you're trying to make new friends and then you're also trying to maintain your old friends, especially if you
Yes.
like move somewhere new or even if you like are in the same place, but a lot of your friends moved away, you still have to like make new friends. So like, how do you find that balance? Because
Yeah.
you don't want to lose all your close relationships, but you also don't want to be alone where you are presently, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it boils down to intentionality. And I had to learn that the hard way because I moved to Boston for grad school, I think in 2021. So it was still kind of a COVID world.
Yeah.
And I moved here by myself and I moved here for a program. So there was like a built-in system within which
Mm-hmm.
I knew I would make some
Mm-hmm.
friends. And I guess the friends that I made through my program count as my work friends, but they actually feel, or in reality, they are my life friends as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a little bit different because when I was working in finance, like those were my colleagues who were also my friends.
Yeah.
But in grad school, my friends are like my friends first. And then it's like we might collaborate one
Mm-hmm.
day. But I think I was very blessed in that that was a built-in community, and
Yeah,
so we had proximity, we were seeing each other every day, we knew each other's likes and dislikes, and so there's almost a friendship that evolves from just being in the same space as someone,
for
like,
sure.
every single week, and I think the best friends that I've made in this program are also the people that just work from the office every day, and
Mhm.
so from having lunch and water cooler conversations and things like that, a friendship was established. I think the difficulty for me came with the fact that most of my friends in grad school had been in Boston for a while or had their own families. And
Oh.
so we were on from like 9 to 5. But then at 5 o'clock or on the
Yeah.
weekends, they'd go back to their established lives.
Mhm.
And I think the interesting thing about adults, especially ones who don't live in transient cities, is that you have your established community and group of friends. And
Yeah.
so there is little incentive for you to try to make new friends. Like if your life
Mm.
is already full, if you have a partner, if you have kids, if you have like your neighbors, all of that, like you're very much so at capacity. And so
Mhm.
you're not looking for people to
Yeah.
join that group. And so I realized that if I wanted to foster a sense of community for myself, I would have to after 5 o'clock, I would have to, like, very
Yeah.
intentionally seek that out, and that's what I did with joining our church and, like, community group and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That really provided me with a group of friends who were going through something similar because most of the people in our community group are like in grad school, just graduated, just moved to Boston. And
Yeah.
so they're also looking for that sense of community. So I think you have to find people in like a similar life stage as you and
Mhm.
then desperately cling on to them.
No, I think that's great advice, and that's such a good point about how, like, people that are already established or feel established don't have the same incentive, and so they're not looking for it.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
it's hard if you're like, "I'm looking for a close friendship," and they are just, like, not there because they have all this other stuff going on. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, recognizing who is actually available in the first place.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and then
Mhm.
pursuing those people.
Yes. Yeah, you have to be it's like dating. You have to find the right matches, and if they're not emotionally available, just move on. Just find someone else.
Find someone else. And it's that point about like putting yourself out there. Literally, so I
Yes.
moved here in 2021 and that was like COVID was, finally like slowly dying down, but I was
Yeah.
not used to meeting new people because like the whole COVID year I
No.
was only around people that I knew. It was like no new friends.
Exactly.
So then I got
None.
here and I was like, "Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I have to like introduce myself."
I
I do not
know.
want to do that.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
really was like putting yourself out there and
Yeah.
like trying
Yeah.
it on,
Yeah.
reaching out to people. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I didn't anticipate was, like, trying to make friends within different groups and then, like, realizing you might not wanna be friends with someone And like pulling back after that, it's just
Mm,
there's so many things to navigate there, which I think is so interesting.
yeah. And it's interesting. I was talking to someone and she was talking about how, like, for a while she had this idea of like what her friends would be like or what they would look like and what they would seem
Mm.
like. And so she was kind of keeping herself from friendships because if they didn't meet her idea of what her ideal friend would be, she wouldn't like pursue
Yeah.
it further. And like
Yeah.
now, like having left that mindset, seeing that, wow, a lot of my friends are very different than me in a number of ways,
Yeah.
but they are also very like compatible with me in friendship. And I
Yeah.
think that's also something I've learned moving here. Yeah, just not going in with any like preconceived notions about what your friend or what a good friend can look like or be like, you
Yeah.
know?
I think that's a really good point. Like, I have friends who are the complete opposite of me. Like, they're
Mm.
living a completely different life.
Yeah.
They are untethered. They are completely free-spirited.
Mhm.
They do things that if you saw me doing them, you would be like, Justine, someone's pushed Justine off the edge. And it's just so enlightening to see, I think, how people like that can fill and change your lives.
Yeah.
Because I realized, I think, fundamentally from friendships, I want someone who can teach me something and someone who can be there for me. And
Mm.
I think finding someone who can be there for you is like pretty fundamental to friendship. But then
Yeah.
finding people from whom you can like learn things and grow with, I think that's also another element that I didn't initially consider, but that has just been so important to my own development.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And it leads me to something that I have been struggling with, or
Yeah.
like something that I've been recognizing and trying to accept, but I'm like struggling to accept it. And it's the idea
Yeah.
of like seasonal friendships. And I'm like the first one,
Ugh.
I'm the first person to be like, oh, it was just for a
Ah,
season. Like, this is just
yeah.
a season. But I realize with friendships, like, I really like holding on to people. Like, even if I only speak to you once a year,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I just want to know,
Yeah.
like, you're in my orbit. Like, we don't hate each other. But
Yeah.
on what you were saying, like, you meet new people and they might be someone who you learn a lot from, who teaches you a lot. And then,
Yeah.
like, they're not in your life forever for one reason or another. Doesn't mean it necessarily ended badly. Like, maybe they moved away. Like, if you live somewhere like Boston, that's very transient, or
Yeah.
and you just like lose touch or something like that. But just like having to accept the fact that, and I think this is just another part of growing up, like some friendships are
Yeah.
just seasonal and like
Yeah.
that is okay. That has been so hard for me. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah, I relate to that so much. Like, it's
Yeah.
especially because, like, if you picture a friendship ending, you usually think it ends badly or, like,
Yeah.
someone did something,
Yeah.
and if that doesn't happen, then you're thinking, "Oh, if this is my friend, I should reach out or we should be in
Yeah.
touch." Like,
Yeah.
it's really hard, I think, to let go of certain friendships because I think there are 2 reasons. 1, if I've gone so far as to call someone my friend, then I feel like there's this underlying promise to be there for them and them
Mm.
to be there for me through
Mhm.
ups and downs and through like different life experiences. And so subconsciously letting go of that contract feels like a betrayal of what our friendship was when it was at its peak.
That's deep.
I don't know how to it's hard to let that go, but I think we all are on different life paths and we go through different things at different times. And you just can't bring everyone through every step of your journey, which is really, really hard to accept.
Oh my gosh. It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
hard. And it's like what you were saying. And I feel like most times it's not like it ended badly or anything.
No.
But it's just the fact that like you really were like an important person in my life at one
Yes.
point,
Yes.
and like now we just no longer have a relationship because of one reason or another.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like we could maybe like what if we just started talking again? Like couldn't we just like can't you still just be like another person in my life? But that's just not the case. And for some reason it's just like so hard. And maybe it's because of what you were saying, like this contract that you have But it's
Yeah.
like also recognizing you were really important in my life for this season and I needed you during
Yeah.
that season.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
when I think about the friendships in my life that have been seasonal, most of them, it's because we've literally been going through the same thing at the same time,
Mhm.
or we were starting a new phase of our life at the exact same time. And so we bonded over that commonality. But then when we stepped out of that time, it's almost like I realized that that thing that we went through together was the foundation of our friendship. And it
Mm.
doesn't make the friendship any less valid,
Mm.
but it means that it's more work to maintain it once that thing that connected you is gone,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
I guess, kind of tough to realize. But as I get older, it's the more that I realize that, okay, I might have some friends for a season, but I also have forever friends.
Yeah.
And those are like my 3 friends from college, and then I have like 3 friends from growing up that just have been with me now for like decades or over a
Yeah.
decade. And no matter what phase of life we are in, we always come back to each other. And I
Mm.
couldn't tell you what was different about these friendships, maybe because they were formed in like our more formative years. But those are the ones that transcend seasonality. And those are the ones that I expect will be the ones I still have when I'm like 85 years old.
Yeah, no, that's so beautiful. And I think like another one of the reasons, there's so many, but one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on for this topic is because I feel like when we've talked about it in the past, you have just done a really good job at maintaining those like long-term friendships or those friendships
Mm,
where you've gone through changes separately
mhm.
but still remained
Yeah,
friends, which I think
yeah,
is huge because I think it's change that a lot of times breaks friendships. Like something changes and so the friendship no longer continues. And so it's
yeah,
like with those like forever friends or your really close friendships, like how have you navigated change throughout, like
yeah,
over time?
yeah. So it's so interesting you asked that because so my best friend, we talk on FaceTime every single day.
Mhm.
Like literally every day to the point where her husband will grab the phone and be like, "What could you possibly have to talk about?" Like you were texting all day, you talked for an hour yesterday, like what? So so we're pretty much like in contact all the time. And we met our first year of college and we just instantly clicked. Like I
Mhm.
think before we even made it to campus, we'd been messaging online. And it's like the friendship just slipped into place.
Mm.
And for the first 4 years of college, we just did everything together. So we did classes together, we did clubs together, we did most of our meals together. We still had our own independent hobbies, but our lives just fell into place seamlessly. Like like it was
Yeah.
fascinating for me to see and experience. And then senior year, she met her then boyfriend, now
Yeah.
husband.
Yeah. Dun dun dun.
I know. Oh my god. Yeah, that's a sound that played in my head. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Don't send him this.
Oh, he knows. He knows.
Yeah.
I tell them all the time. Like, I think she met him in like, I didn't know, in like October. And I always joke with both of them now where I'm like, I didn't see you again until February. So, so I had this best friend who was literally my other half for like
Yeah.
all of college. And I think I I hadn't envisioned a different world. Like I
Mm.
imagined that we would be doing senior year together like that.
Yeah.
And then the love of her life comes along and just knocks me out of the running. And suddenly, all this time that I filled with like my soulmate was just open.
Mm.
And I remember there were moments where I was just like I appreciate the fact that when you're getting to know like the love of your life, obviously that should be your priority. But there were moments where it was like, is this like how it's gonna be forever?
Mm.
Or like once they've gotten through the accelerated getting to know you phase, will we settle back into our friendship?
Hmm.
And I think I also really struggled with the fact that when she was single, we did so many things together.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she met her partner, she started doing a lot of that with him. And I don't just
Mm.
mean like activities, but it's just like there's an emotional and cognitive burden that you share with your close friends. And when you
Mm-hmm.
get a partner, you start to share that with your partner. If you have a bad day, if you have a good day, you're sharing that with your partner and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like I spend a lot of time wondering how my own feelings and emotions and needs would be able to fit into
Yeah.
the new version of her life.
Yeah.
But I actually think we had several conversations about this, like me and my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
I think early the following year, the spring of our senior year, we sat down and I think I talked to her about some of this. Yeah, I remember saying something along the lines of, I haven't seen you in forever. You don't text me anymore. You don't call. I don't have a best friend.
Like, where are you? I
Where
don't
are
know.
you? I was so
Absent.
dramatic. I was like, you didn't come to senior ball. How could you? I was so salty. But I think one thing I really appreciated about her is that at no point was she like, oh, yeah, but she didn't get like defensive or like, you're
Yeah.
lying. Oh, I've been around. Like every time I brought it up, she was like, yeah, I know I haven't been around. I'm going to work on doing better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our foundation of friendship then called upon me to trust that she would actually do that
Hmm.
and therefore demonstrate that, like, okay, she wasn't like a seasonal friend. She was actually the life friend that we both knew that we were. And that was really helpful, I think. And it got better as she spent more time with her partner
Mm-hmm.
and as I got to know her partner. And
Mm-hmm.
then we moved to New York together and he was around a lot as well, but we spent I think a lot of time together during that as well. And two things that I think really helped me was that she did try to be a lot more intentional about the time that we spent together. Over time, she did get so much better at just like FaceTiming and texting, such
Mm-hmm.
that I felt like if I needed her, I could reach out. And I always knew that I could. Like there was never a
Yeah.
moment where I was like, "Oh, if something happens, I can't call her." But there were moments where I felt like, "Okay, I need to give them space to build this thing and then let them decide how I fit back into their lives."
Hmm.
And then the other thing that really helped was I had so much more time now because she was with her partner. And so
Mm-hmm.
I started to find other friends and other activities and fill my time with that.
Yeah.
And I think that helps because if I was just sitting around with that time waiting for my best friend to pop
Yeah.
up, I think I would become a bitter and resentful person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I started filling that with other people and activities.
Yeah. And I think it sounds like you were also very patient and like you had a lot of grace. Like, obviously, you were frustrated and you were upset at different points, which is just being human. But I think, like I've heard with relationships, it's always two people saying yes. And once one person starts saying no, that's how like relationships end. So it's like, even when you were like not super happy with her, you were still saying yes and you were still like showing up and like saying what you were upset about. You weren't just hiding that or like keeping that to yourself, letting it bottle up until like it exploded into this huge thing. And then the
Mhm.
friendship ended, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But I think even more than that, it was that she was also just like so intentional. And she was like,
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm getting to know this person, but there is still very much so a place for you in my life.
Yeah.
She was always very, very clear about that. And I think that's what really, really helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great point. And so, I mean, like you said, they are married now, but you are still
Yeah.
very much so in each other's lives. And
Yes.
I need you to talk about that because personally, I have a wedding this week. Okay, you know who you are. You know who you are, friend. And it's not even like we talk every day or anything like that. But I just have this. I just have this idea in my head. Like once people get married, I'm just never gonna see them anymore. They're never gonna talk to me
I
again.
Mhm,
And I
mhm,
know
yeah,
that's not true because I'm like I wouldn't do that. So why would someone else do that? But I just
yeah,
have this idea. And so like how do you navigate that once your friend
yeah,
like them getting into a relationship is one thing. But then them getting
yeah,
married and it's like, oh, this person is also going to be there forever. That's like a whole other
yeah. It's a whole other thing. Like I was here first. No, I'm
thing.
joking. No.
Make sure he knows. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh. No, I'm so fascinated by friendship dynamics because in so many ways it is like a relationship because you have to have this foundation of trust and you also have to have so much humility and
Mm,
swallow your pride
mm,
because
wow.
for me it was like I feel like I had to swallow my pride because I came to the point where I realized that our friendship would have to occur on her terms, which
Mm,
is not a dynamic that she ever like put
yeah.
upon us. It was one
Yeah.
that I put on myself, but it was just like, okay, she has this whole other life with this person, and I don't want to intrude on it. So I have to wait and see how she invites me into that.
And she told you she wanted you in her
Yes,
life.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I had to trust that she would do that.
Yeah.
So, like, this would not have worked if she didn't reassure me of that. And if she hadn't made the effort, it wouldn't have worked. And then I
Yeah.
think on my part, it wouldn't have worked if I had resented or pushed her partner away
Yeah.
or stood in the way of that.
Yeah.
And that's something I had to learn because I think I think like a year after she met her partner, I think I sat down with her one day and I was like, "So, just to be clear, you know I'm really happy for you and your partner, right? Like over the moon. Like I've said that before, right?"
Yeah.
And she was like, "I don't know if you've said that before." I was like, "Oh." And
Oh my gosh. I
so
would
I
do the
need to
same thing.
I was like, "Okay, growth needs to happen on my side." But yeah, I think getting to the place like, I was always really happy for them because seeing her fall in love was, like, a very exciting thing for both of us because, like,
Mm,
when it's your best friend, if she's falling in love, it feels like you're falling in love. But I needed to get to the place where, like,
yeah.
I had mourned the old version of our friendship and
Mm,
fully embraced this
mm,
new dynamic, trusting that I could be a part of it.
mm,
And it was so helpful, I think, that we talked about it through each stage. And like,
mm.
if I ever felt like I hadn't seen her for a while, even now, I'll just text her and be like, "Hi, you dead? Like, what's going on?" just to express that something's
Yeah.
missing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that phrasing of like mourning the old version of the friendship because you're acknowledging like it's not the same. Doesn't
It's
mean it's
not.
bad or anything
No,
like
no,
that, but
no.
it's
Yeah,
different and you're
yeah,
just like saying it for what it is because it has to change as like you both change and you both like get older and like different life things happen, but
yeah.
you're still close friends and like even what you were saying about being close to her partner or just like developing a relationship with her partner as well. Because I think at the
Mhm.
end of the day, it's not a competition.
No.
And if it was, we would lose. Okay. So, like,
It'd be like, "Bye."
so there's no point. There's literally no point. Like, compete. I feel like it's like, I mean,
No.
either.
There's not. There really isn't.
And I think there's many reasons for that,
Yeah,
biologically.
yeah. Yes. Yeah, like, I cannot give her children. Like, can't do that yet.
So yeah, but it's like having a relationship with them to where you're also
Mhm.
comfortable around them. You don't hate them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's important. That is so important. And I think also realizing so life played out in such a way that she found her partner first, and she
Yeah.
moved on to that stage of life first, and
Yeah.
I think I spent a lot of time picturing what life would look like if the reverse would happen.
Hmm.
And I think we would treat each other the same way if the reverse had happened. And that helps to like provide some perspective as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No kids yet, but
No kids.
I don't know if you've gone through that transition with your friend having kids.
Oh, no, not yet. Have you?
I mean, friends that I don't talk to as frequently, yes.
Mhm.
But I think it's like the same thing as just recognizing that they're in a different season of life. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
one, how can I support you? Especially if they have kids. I think like their
Yes.
time is a lot more different. And it's not even like, it's not in their control as much anymore. It's like you
Yeah.
have a human being that you are supporting. So it's like, how can I support you? And like, obviously, moms still need friends. Like, nothing,
Yes.
they
Yeah.
do not suddenly not need friends because they have a
Yes.
child. I think if
Yeah.
anything, they need them more than ever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like showing up in a different way and seeing like the friendship change, but that's
Yeah.
not bad necessarily.
Yeah. And we've already started talking about this because it was such a transition when she met her partner.
Yeah.
And so we started talking about like, okay, when you have a kid, like, I'll see you 2 months. Bye. Like, jokingly, I'll say things like that. But I realize, especially because I now have a nephew, how all encompassing the life of a parent can be and
Mm.
how overwhelming with your time that can be. And like, I mean, our solution so far, given that it hasn't happened yet, is that we're going to build a commune with a bunch of houses. And so I'll be right next door.
Naturally.
Exactly. So I can just like come on over and help take care of the baby, and that will be your dynamic.
Yeah.
And TBD on what that does look like. But I think my best friend is my best friend, such that when I go on the job market, I think proximity to her will be like a huge consideration in where
Mm.
I end up because we do want to build our lives with each other and be intentional about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've already been talking about the category of like long distance friendships, but I feel like those
Yeah.
become more of a thing as you get older. Just like
Oh,
naturally,
yes.
people have to move for various things. They have to move for school, they have to move for work, they have to
Mhm.
move just for life. They have partners, their partners have to move, they have to move with them. You know, like things like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so I definitely like went through a period when after I first moved where it was just like, is any of this worth it? Like, will this friendship ever be a friendship again? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hate this.
Yeah.
And it's like I've found a better balance now, and like there's different ways you can, keep the long distance friendship strong.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's also this feeling of like no call is ever long enough.
I
Like
know.
nothing is ever enough. Even when you visit your friend, like I was just visiting one of my friends, and there's a thing called post visit depression, like post friend visit
Oh,
depression or something like that. And it's like
no.
you're just kind of sad afterwards. I mean, I don't know
Oh,
if it's an actual thing, but it's a thing I saw on TikTok. Okay, so it's a thing.
yeah,
Um,
it sounds right. I believe you.
but it's like you're sad because it's like, oh my gosh, like why can't we just be around each other all the time?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
why do
yeah,
we have to live so far from each other? Why can't I live near all
yes.
my friends, everyone,
Oh,
ever, all the time?
yes.
And it's just like such a hard feeling to face
It
because
is.
at least for now, and I think maybe as seasons change, like you said, at one point you will have more agency over where you can live versus
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but it's you're so right. It's like I am frustrated with the geographic distance because
Yeah.
it would be so much easier to connect with my best friends, partner or not, if I just lived right next door.
Yeah.
Like, it would be so much more convenient.
Yeah.
It would be you could be way less intentional than you are right now. And that's like particularly frustrating for me because so I grew up in Jamaica and most people stay on the island. So like my dad's best friend from high school is still his friend
Wow.
and lives 5 minutes away
That's crazy.
from our house. So this whole idea of like seasonal and geographic friendships was not a thing for me growing up. Everyone was around all the time.
Wow. Yeah.
I wanted more geography.
Yeah.
But it's coming here and seeing it where I'm just like, okay, you have to make a plan around this. And I think being so intentional and then like, I think actively making a choice around, okay, yes, there are seasonal friendships, but what friendships am I bought into? What people do I want to build my life around? And what
Mm,
am I seriously willing to do to make that happen?
mm,
That's like
yeah.
an important consideration, I think.
It's a hard question. And it's like the point around community too, especially as Christians, it's like community is so important.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. I have a friend who's a part of a strong like church community, and they all
Mhm.
like graduated and chose to stay in that same area and like
Yeah.
volunteer for the ministry with the college together. Like they had to like make that choice, but it was also a sacrifice in some ways because it's like
Yeah.
maybe a job opportunity that you would have liked better would have been somewhere else, but you wanted to
Yeah.
stay in this
Yeah.
community. So it's
Yeah.
like there's different sides of it. But I think also
Mhm.
I was complaining to God about this. I was like, why is life like this? Why?
Oh,
And literally I was in Acts and I randomly saw this verse about how like it was just like how they were all scattered around to preach the gospel. And it
yeah.
was this realization that like, wow, let's say Paul, like he wanted to be hanging out with Timothy and Peter and all the other boys. Like they all wanted to be together all the time, but they weren't. They were like spread out on mission doing what God had called them to do. And it was kind of like
Yeah.
it's this idea that okay, so like I'm here right now, not near all my friends, but like I am
Yeah.
doing what God has called me to do. And so are you. Like you would
Yeah.
not be
Yeah.
fully living out what God has called you to do in this season if you were living with your best friend or next door, you know?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. That's such a good point. I never thought about it that
Yeah,
way.
he really hit me with that and I was like, dang, okay. I was like, okay.
Oh, you're so right. Wow. No, that is such a good point. You're right. We're where we're supposed to be for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think God also brought like my best friends into my like I would not be the person that I am today without my best friends from college. Like
Yeah.
they've been so instrumental to my growth. And I think people play up romantic relationships a lot because they're so important. And like the person you end up with is often the person you're like combining your life with.
Mhm.
But friends can also fill that space. And I think that's just been so amazing for me to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And it's something we talked about, I think on the being single episode, like
Mhm.
how it is so much I just feel like the value of it changes.
Yes.
The
Yes.
value of it changes when you feel like, okay, but I have all these great relationships, even though they're platonic, like that love is still love.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
this is like, I mean, oh yeah, you were there too. So this is great. Because another thing I feel like God has really been teaching me is just about this idea of like, must all friendships be quote unquote reciprocal?
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, you were there. Shout out to Maddie.
Right.
I don't know if she's listening to this, but shout out to you because that really came from me.
Yeah.
Like we live in this culture that is like
Yeah.
cut people off. I mean, toxic people is
Yes.
one thing, but like if
Yes.
people are no longer serving you, cut them out of your life,
Yeah.
all these things. And if it was left to me, like, and someone did one thing,
Mhm.
I would have no friends.
I
Like you
know.
did one thing, I would have no friends. I would
Yeah.
never keep a friend longer than like a year or anything like that.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's you're so right. I felt so convicted by that as well
Yeah.
because I have friends that I just feel like I am pouring into, or like not currently, but like I feel like I've had friend relationships where every time I meet up with them, they're just complaining to me about something and there's
Mhm.
no return like how are you doing? How's it going? It's
Mhm.
like I am their safe space to rant or to
Yeah.
ask for advice. Like I can't think of any versions of that that I currently have in my life, but I've had that before. And I'm often like, this isn't serving me. Like, why am I doing
Yeah.
this? Like this, I don't need this in my life. And so the inclination is to cut it off. But I think there are two things that I felt really convicted about when Maddie said that. One is that there have been seasons in my life where I have been that person.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
where everything in my life is going so wrong that I'm just dumping my trauma onto other people, and
Yeah.
I just didn't have the capacity to like reciprocate and be like, so how are you? And the people that I did that to just gave me so much grace
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And so how could I not want to do a version of that in return? And then even if someone isn't ultimately balancing the scales, like what I learned is that, or what I felt convicted about is that, like, there are people for whom you just might always have to play that role, even if they're friends that you just have because, you've known them forever. And
Yeah.
so you haven't grown together, but they still just come to you for those things. And I'm just like, honestly, if my relationship with God was based on reciprocity, I would be.
Yeah.
God would have left me a long time ago. So
Yeah.
I I think it's giving the other person grace, but also just humbling myself because, like, if this person feels like they can put all of this on you and they trust you with it, then that's also a privileged thing to have, even if it can be cognitively taxing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like at the end of the day, like how are we loving them? Like are we loving them in a
Yes.
selfish way or in an
Yes.
unselfish way? And I
Yes.
don't think this is to say, like I think it requires discernment to know because it's not to say, oh, everyone who is just like
Absolutely
draining
not.
you like needs to
Absolutely.
be in your life or anything like that.
No.
But
No.
it's just to say like sometimes it takes deeper thought and
Mhm.
consideration. And
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that this person is going to be the person that, you talk to every day. Because I
Mhm.
think that's also the other benefit of having multiple people in your life. It doesn't mean you need like 1 million friends, but knowing that
Yeah.
I like to think about it like what? A galaxy? No,
Yes.
solar system.
Okay, collection.
Girl,
Something
I
like
don't know.
that. I'm not sure.
I don't even know. But like everyone is a planet, okay? Like if you have a
Yeah.
partner, they are a planet, your friends are planets, your family, everything. And so it's
Yeah.
like maybe like one of your friends really needs you in this season, so they're always going to
Yeah.
you. And so you can't like share as much of what's going on in your life with them. But that's okay
Yeah.
because you have
Yeah.
other friends who have more capacity who you can
Yes.
share more with. And like
Yes.
those people can change in time too. And something
Yeah.
my friend Jordan was telling me was like a lot of times in those friendships or in some seasons where you feel like, oh, they're coming to me a lot. Like you said, you'll turn around in a few months, in a year, you'll be the one coming to them a
Yeah.
lot. And luckily, they'll be in a
Mhm.
better place. And so it's like also realizing that at the end of the day, you're friends for a reason. Like you said, to just be
Yes.
there for each other,
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
that looks like.
Yes. Yeah. And I like that you prefaced that with the idea that there can still be toxic friendships out there and you have to discern which one is like actually toxic
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
which one is just like you being there for someone.
Yeah.
Because I think there's also an element of friendship that involves protecting your peace and
Mm,
finding that balance, I think is really interesting.
yeah. And I think it's also like communication, right? Like it'll come to that point where you need to say, like, hey, like, love you, girl. You need a therapist. Like, it's not like,
Yeah.
like, like,
Listen.
like, this is cute, but like, we're not gonna
But
be doing this a year from now. Like,
no,
you
absolutely
need
not. Oh my gosh, God give me the strength to do that. I'm still working on that. Like, the best I can do is just like slowly wean the friendship away, like stop messaging first and then provide short answers and then delay
no,
responses. The hard cutoff is so hard for
no,
me.
and that no, no, and I'm not even saying like say you need a therapist. Bye, never talk to me again. But it's like in addition to me like being your friend and like being there
Yes.
for you because I desperately want
Yes.
to, but I can recognize that what you need is above what I can offer
Yes.
you, and
Yes. Yes. That you're so
like
right. Yes.
yes, Jesus, yes, we'll pray together, but also like
More.
deeply consider this.
Yes. Amen.
And I would want someone to tell me that. Like I would want someone to tell me that because it's like out of love. It's a love response.
Yeah. I'm dying because I was talking to my best friend once and she said that to me.
Really?
She was like, love you. I don't know if I can deal with this. Therapy.
No, I'm the biggest therapy advocate. My friends know. I'll tell them. Like, Consider
It's
it.
great. Oh my God.
That's so funny. But no, I think it's an important question, especially with our generation,
Yeah.
because it's a question of like, how do you maintain friendships? Like, how do you maintain your friendships as an adult? And
Mhm.
honestly, I feel like as you get older, you just experience more and more difficult things. Like, I think that's just a part of life. Like, you experience
Mhm.
pain, you experience hardship,
Yeah.
and that has an impact on you, and that impacts how you relate with your friends. And so, if it's just like
Yeah.
someone changes because they're going through a hard time and you can no longer like be their friend anymore because of that, I don't think that's always a good enough reason, basically, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I still struggle with that as well because it's like, I don't know what the balance is of like
Yeah.
being with someone through a change versus cutting them off for the sake of your own. Like it's interesting because like when my friends become my true friends, for me they become my family. So I
Mm,
can't think of anything like my brother could do that would cause me to permanently cut him out of my life. And that's the same thing with like my best friends from college. Like I cannot imagine a scenario where we are not connected anymore. And like obviously if they like murdered someone or something like that. But it's like when I think of the realm of possibilities of
yeah.
things that they could do to me, I could not imagine us getting to that place. And I think the fundamental logic behind that for me is that we are such good friends. And so if they ever went through something hard, of course I would be there for them through it. But that's also way easier to say than it is to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
much easier to say.
No. And I think I've been learning like you will always reach the end of yourself, especially when we're loving them from our own capacity. Like I will always
Yes.
eventually I will always reach the end and I'll be like,
Yes.
I can't do this anymore. But
Yes.
that's when it's like, oh, I need to be loving them with I need God's help. Like I need to be loving them with the love of
Yeah.
God
That's
because
such a
his
good
love
point.
doesn't
Yeah.
end. And like
Yeah.
it's so crazy. And this is what I mean by discernment because in my own natural mind, there will be times where I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm upset. I'm over it. I'm just going to distance myself. And
Yeah.
God will be like, no, don't. And I'm like, but he's like,
Yes.
don't. And then like I have a conversation with them and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize like all of this stuff was going on. And I
Yeah.
was just on my own, already like mad and already like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
he just always has more to give. And so it's like realizing like, and like you said, putting down your pride as well. Like, it's not me. Like, I'm only a good friend
Yeah.
to the extent that I'm like connected to the source of true love and like can give that to you. Because on my own, girl, that's what I said. I would have no friend.
No, that should be a sermon. You know, when you're at the end of your rope,
Yeah.
pull God's like that is such a good point. Like I feel
Yeah.
convicted. There are definitely some friendships in my life that I could use that for and will.
No, same too. I'm preaching to myself for sure.
Love
For sure.
that.
So we kind of already started like touching on some things, but I guess it would also be good to talk about just like practically what things have helped us maintain friendships over
Mm,
time.
mhm. Definitely like the communicating. So
Hmm.
like the FaceTime with my best friend, yeah, we FaceTime like almost every day, but with my other two best friends from college, we schedule time consistently to catch up and just
Hmm.
see what's happening in each person's life. We try to schedule trips to see each other. And so, like
Yeah.
last year, we coordinated a 7-person trip with my best friends from college and their partners, where we all went to California together, had
Yeah.
like Tough Mudder together. We all reunited for like each person in the group's wedding. Like we're going to see
Mm.
each other in DC this summer. So I think carving space into our lives for these friendships. People
Yeah.
talk all the time about carving space out for like your romantic partner and like making career decisions around your romantic partner and financial, all that.
Hmm.
But doing that for your friends
Yeah.
is so important. And like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people talk about how life is going to work out the way that it's supposed to work out. And I always push back on that because I'm like, sure, but effort. Like you have to
Yeah.
put in
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah.
Like you can't just sit back and all the chips of life are gonna fall into place. I
Yeah.
think you have to be very, very intentional about how you pursue your friendships and like how you spend your time. Otherwise, like, I'm sorry, friendships are work. They are
Yeah.
work. They don't just
Yeah.
happen.
That's good.
They're work, and you have to put the work in.
Yeah. No, that's such a great point because people could easily look at you and be like, oh my gosh, Justine, she has like all these close relationships and like she talks to her best friend. Like that takes intentionality, like you said,
So much
and
work.
it takes
Yeah.
work. Like it didn't just happen overnight.
No.
Like it takes
No.
having those hard conversations, like you said, and not being afraid
Yeah.
of those. Like it's
Yeah.
not easy. Obviously, the fruit is beautiful, but
Yeah.
like it takes work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be willing to talk about it. Like, oh my God, I remember the growing pains over friendship taught us that we needed to talk or we would not be friends anymore.
Yeah.
Like, our first year living together, I remember I was someone and remain someone who's very conflict averse.
Oh my
And
gosh,
so
same.
if like, so like if something's bothering me and you're doing it, I'll probably let you do it for like 6 months. And in my head, every time you do it, I'm like, and, but I won't say anything. And in my mind, I'm like being gracious by not saying anything. But when I say it,
It will come out so harshly. Like
back. And I remember one day my best friend, like, she was talking to me and she was basically like, yeah, you know how graciously you're hiding your annoyance? I promise you, you're not. You were passive aggressive
passive aggressive. Yeah.
every
Mhm.
time
Yep.
I did that. And I was like, me? Oh my God. So it's like having those tough conversations and then changing and being like, okay, I'm done being passive aggressive. When you do something that makes me mad, we're in the place in our friendship where I can tell you, where I can trust that no one is being mean spirited. So, not just communicating, but being honest about your feelings and what you
Mm,
need. It's just so instrumental, I think, in building friendships that will last.
yeah. Yeah. No. That's so true. And I'm still recovering. I'm still recovering. But it's so true. And it's like if you actually care about the friendship, if you actually want it to
Yes.
last, you have to. You have to.
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
you think, oh, keeping it to myself will preserve it's not, it's only gonna make things worse in the long run.
Yeah, 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 mhm.
And I do think you do a great job with like having trips, like scheduling things because it's true. Like even though you are long distance, I definitely think your friendship can grow. I've experienced that my friendships grow stronger when we were
Mhm.
apart, but I
Yeah.
think it is so important to see each other in person.
Yes, yes.
Obviously, it's financial commitment as well. So it's not like you're going to see,
Mm,
like, you may not see them every 3 months or anything like
yes.
that. But I
Yeah,
think like trying one way or another to see each other, it makes a huge difference. I feel like even
it
just
does.
because when you're in person, you kind of get all those things that you miss
Yeah,
when you're on FaceTime. And then you can make
yeah,
memories together that you can talk about when you're on FaceTime in the future. Like you can look back
yes,
on these things and you
yes,
have like new memories together. And it's not like, oh,
yeah.
remember that time back in college like 3 years ago, last time we like, like I just don't think
Exactly,
it's just not
exactly.
it's not the same.
It's
So
not.
whatever cadence, it doesn't matter, but
Yeah.
just like knowing that at some point I will see this person.
Yeah, because they're also building a new version of their lives apart from you, and you hear about it
Yeah.
when you're talking to them, but, like, seeing it is different, like,
Yeah.
seeing them with, like, the partner that they met after you both graduated college or, like,
Yeah.
seeing their community, like, it's such a different experience from hearing about it, and it just
Yeah.
I don't know, it really fills in the gaps sometimes.
Yeah. I totally advocate for that. I think like luckily there's like two of my friends specifically that we like always travel together. And it's just
Yeah,
become a thing. Like we like traveling together, but
yeah.
it's made the friendship so rich because I'll just be looking through my
Mm,
camera roll and I like see photos from like our last trip. And I'm like,
yeah.
guys, remember this. And you just have like new memories and you can laugh about things. And I
Yeah.
just I don't like take those times for granted either. And it's just something for
No.
you to even look forward to in your own life. You want to take vacations anyways with your time
Mhm.
off when you're working, or sorry, students, but I don't know how others are. But like,
Yes, same.
if you can take time off and do that with your friends, I think
Yeah,
it really makes a difference.
I agree. I agree. It's a lovely time.
Yeah. And I think, again, with what you're saying, making time to talk to each other, I think the cadence is really up to you. I feel like with my friendships, it's not the same for everyone. And that is also
Mhm.
still okay. Like, even though there are some friends that I only talk to once a month, it's still a really good conversation because I feel like it just
Mhm.
depends on the friend. Like, some people,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
easy. Like, you're both texters, you can just text randomly throughout the day.
Yes.
Some
Yes.
people, they don't really text. You have to call them, and that
Yes.
works
Mhm.
too. You don't
Yeah,
call them every day. Maybe you call them once a week, maybe every 2 weeks. But I think it just
yeah.
depends on the friend. But just like having some sort of communication that's ongoing
I agree.
in some
I
form, even if
agree.
it's, I have my friends, it's like every 3 months, but it's like we know we're
Yeah.
gonna like talk about everything, and
Yes.
that's just what
Yes.
works for us. But then I'll
Yes.
still see you
Yes.
in
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. Like, when I think about my 3 best friends from childhood, we're exactly that same way. So we don't talk every day. We don't talk every week, but when we're together, it is the best
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and I don't know, it's interesting because, like, I don't talk to them obviously nearly as much as I talk to my best friend Hair, but they're also the people that I know, like, if I was hospitalized tomorrow, they would be there for me.
Mm,
Like, they are still in that tier
yeah.
1 friendship group, even though we're not in that constant communication.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah, my childhood cousins for sure. Same thing.
Yeah,
Like, we
yeah,
don't call frequently at all. But
yeah,
like when I
yeah,
see you, like we know each other.
yeah.
It's
So you're
crazy.
right, friendships do look different. Like, it's never gonna be the same formula for every single person.
Yeah. And I think being
Yeah,
okay with that, like not trying to be like, oh, but if you are this type of friend, then we have to do this because that is what I do with my
yeah,
other friend.
yeah. You're so right, you have to tailor it to each person.
Yeah. And I think with time, you kind of figure out what works.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Because, like, okay, so I remember when I'm half my stories come back to my best friend, but I remember when I met her, like, within a month of us being friends, she started FaceTiming me. And, like, the first time she FaceTimed me, I was so triggered because I was like, like, I don't answer phone calls, like, text me. That's how
I don't answer.
like,
Meanwhile,
I
I have friends that will not text me back, but they want to call. Like, text me back.
where's he going? Like, come on. Oh my god, that's her. Like, she would FaceTime me because that's how her family communicates. And I remember the first time I was like, oh my god, is someone dying? Like, what is happening? Um, and I had to learn that that was how she communicated. And it's so interesting because 2 months into our friendship, I then was FaceTiming her with that cadence and felt like I didn't have like a full day or a full week unless I
Mm,
had FaceTimed her. So
mm-hmm.
that's what set the baseline for our friendship. And it's something that I've come to rely on. Even though that initially wasn't like my form of communication, now it's
Yeah.
like 1,000% my
Yeah.
my thing. So I don't know, you can like do different things with different friends, learn from your friends, match each other's styles. Like,
Yeah.
it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, what we're saying is just maintaining some form of communication. So, like,
Yes.
if you
Yes.
text and they don't text back and they don't call, then we're just not going to, then we're just not talking.
We're not talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like
Mhm.
whatever, even if it's audio notes, like I know I have some friends that really
Yeah.
like that. So it's just like
Yeah.
being flexible.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree.
And then I guess just back to the point for change. I feel like leaving
Mhm.
room for change. I think for a while I was like very change averse, even though I am changing.
Mm.
But I feel like you don't
Mhm.
really notice your change as drastically as you notice other people's, maybe because
Yeah.
you're going through it. So
Yeah.
it's something I've had to remind myself of. A friend told me this. It's just like not holding people so tightly, like holding them with open hands. Not meaning like you're
Yeah.
letting them go, but just like giving them room to change
Yeah.
because you're also changing and being okay with that, you know?
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah, and I think it's tough because with your friends, you fall in love with a very specific version of them, but you change so much during your 20s, and so the version of themselves that they are in their early 20s is not gonna be who they are at the end. But
Yeah.
I think what I've come to learn is that most of my friendships, I think, inherently have the same value base. Like, we all have probably the same values, and that's what binds us.
Hmm.
And so I've learned even if they change, at their core value-wise, they're still the same. And
Yeah.
so I can deal with the changes because I guess that foundation is still there, even though it's really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, I don't even think I've really experienced this, but sometimes there's this fear of like, oh, what if they change into someone that I just don't like anymore, or someone that I'm like no
Yeah,
longer compatible
yeah.
with?
No, it's interesting because I've played this game with a lot of people. Like, if you met your best friend today, as opposed to when you met them like 10 years ago, would you become friends?
Oh.
Yeah, like
Oh.
I play that game with people all the time, and I don't I think I would, but it would look so different. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I think there's something to be said about history and like going through things together. But I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a tough question to answer.
And it's what you said about the foundation. Like, you have the foundation from when you met them 10 years ago.
Yes, yes.
So it's just different. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm gonna think about that. I'm gonna ponder that.
I don't know the answer.
Okay, is there anything else on this topic that you wanted to share that we didn't touch on?
Hmm. Oh, I guess the last thing that I'll say is that so I made my life friends when I was growing up, and then I made 3 more in college, and I definitely thought I was done.
Before
But
college or
no, in
after
college.
college?
After college.
Okay,
After college,
yeah.
I was like, "Okay, I got my people finished. No
Yeah.
new friends."
Yeah.
And grad school or these years of my later 20s have shocked me in that I've met like 3 to 4, actually not 3 to 4, like I've met quite a few women actually who I'm like, "Wow, you're gonna be in my life for the rest of my life." And that was just
Mm.
so surprising to me to realize because it is so hard to make adult friendships.
Mm.
Um, but I think that there are people yearning for these types of friendships and people who you will encounter in every stage of life who are like going through the same stage as you. And I think if you can bond closely enough during that stage, then you can probably have an enduring friendship. And that is just so surprising to me. Like, I didn't expect to be making new family right now, but I am. And that's just been a
Mm.
really pleasant surprise.
I love that. I love that point. And I hope it continues. I
Yes.
think it's easy to be like, or not easy, but it's like a great feeling to feel like, oh, like I'm very satisfied with the relationships in my life and like I am happy with this. And
Yeah.
then like God surprising you and bringing like new people in. I've definitely
Yeah.
seen that happen.
Yeah.
And it's like such a great surprise. And it's like, actually, I
Mhm.
hope this doesn't stop. Like, I hope, because
Yeah.
like 10 years from now, you'll be in a different season and like maybe you'll
Yeah.
meet new friends that are in that season as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, not being closed-minded or not just feeling like, "Okay, I'm all set." Like
Yeah. Yeah. I've had to learn that, especially with my introverted ways. It's like, no, 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 no. God wants you to have community. Stop being a Grinch. Open up your mind.
Not a cringe.
So, I'm working on that.
And I think that this is something we've talked about is just having friends in the same season of life as you are in
Yeah.
helps, especially if your long-term friends are in different seasons.
Yes.
So, like,
Yes.
having friends that are single.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that there's just, like, so much value in that when you are single especially. Because if
Yes.
all of your friends are in relationships, then you're going to be thinking about, oh, all my friends are in relationships. I need to be in a relationship too,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But if it's
Yes.
like
Yes.
seeing other people that are in the same season and like knowing that you can do things together with them because they are also available,
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. You make such a good point. Yeah. Like my 3 best friends from college are partnered. And then my 3 best friends from my first year of grad school are also partnered.
Oh,
So I
okay.
feel like most of my community was people in relationships. And then this year of grad school, 2 of my friends are now single. And we have bonded so deeply in the
Mm,
last 6 months, it's
yeah.
actually insane because we're
Yeah.
going through dating together and, like, sharing our experiences with each
Yeah.
other. So you're so right, like, going through the same life stage is not to be underrated. It is a
Yeah.
bonding agent.
I honestly think it's so important. And the same thing, like when you're married, having friends that are married, like it just makes sense.
Yeah,
It
it
just
does, it does,
doesn't
it
mean don't
does.
forget your single friends though. Okay.
No, we're not even do that. We're
But
not
it
doing that.
makes sense to like have people that
It
are going through
does.
the same things that you can learn from, share experiences
Yeah,
with, things like that. Yeah.
you're so right, yeah.
No, that's a great point that you made. Okay, so how have things changed for you now that you're embracing spontaneity in your friendships, that you've just become this wise woman? Like
We're working on it. I think my life is more full.
Mm.
Like, because I am introverted, ideally, my ratio each week is 3 to 4, where there's 3 days where I have social plans after 5 o'clock and 4 days where I do not. That's my preferred
She's
ratio.
a planner. Ooh, that's how I know. You're a planner.
Yes. But now, if someone on day 4 is like, "Let's do something," I'm leaning into yes. Like, I'm like, "Oh, my tank is on E,
my
but I'm
my
gonna
me
say
day. My friend calls it me
my
day.
me day." Yes. Oh my goodness. It is me time, no one allowed. But I've started leaning into this idea of just saying yes. When someone comes up
Mm,
to me at work and it's 5:30 and they're like, "Oh, you're going home?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Wanna grab dinner? Wanna grab ice cream?"
mm.
Like, I'm leaning into saying yes because it is very rare, especially with the types of people who ask me, because these are my friends, like, that I'm gonna do it and then think, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that after that."
Oh, I wish I stayed home. Yeah.
Right? Like, if I think that, I don't know if you're my friend. I very rarely, if ever, regret the time that I spend with my friends. So I'm like, why
Yeah.
am I not doing it more? I have no reason to say no. And that spontaneity really has filled my life. So I'm really just trying to say yes more to things like that.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And I think it's like one, having room in your schedule for
Yeah.
that in the first
Yeah.
place. Like you have
Yeah.
the room for the spontaneity and then you can enjoy it like when it happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 I'm looking forward to listening to this episode a year or two from now to reflect on how my approach to friendship has evolved. I loved Justine's encouragement to lean into spontaneity in friendship and can honestly say I always appreciate the spontaneous moments initiated by my friends. Whether it's getting an unplanned FaceTime call during lunch or having an unexpected shopping buddy because they realized I was nearby. I am so thankful for y'all. On that note, I want to end this episode with a challenge to do something spontaneous with a friend this week. I know it probably seems counterintuitive to plan spontaneity, but instead of planning for it, just leave room in your schedule and see what happens. It doesn't have to be anything big, and I know you won't regret it. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on our conversation. Let me know if there are any practices that have helped you maintain your friendships. I'd love to share your advice with other listeners on Instagram at the Making Space Podcast, which you should also follow for more content. I've linked past episodes that I referenced during our conversation in the description box as well. Finally, if you haven't already, please rate or review the podcast wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode of Making Space. Bye!